Bonjour, you beautiful thing. Today we're talking about Starmarks versus Prongs. I'm going to cover all these 5 areas plus all the pros and cons: safety, effectiveness, comfort, ease of use, cost, pros and cons of both of them. But I'm going to give you the conclusion before, if you don't want to watch the rest of this. If I had one to choose, it would be a prong collar. But I'm also really happy that these exist. I didn't use them for years, and I now use them quite a bit, and I'll explain with what dogs and why and what scenario. Bonjour, again, my name is Evan Doggett. I've been a professional dog trainer for over a decade, specializing in behavior modification, aggressive dogs, reactive dogs, challenging clients, and I train a lot of dog trainers now. I had mentors that were like, this is bullshit, this fucking piece of plastic sucks. And so I just took their word for it. It was the same thing as at the beginning. I also had a lot of mentors that were like, choke chains are the best. And I hate choke chains now. I almost never use them because, not because I think they're like a bad tool. I think most people can't use them properly. I think most people can't use a lot of tools properly, which is why I'm so grateful that these things exist, because effectiveness and ease of use are like, compared to other collars, martingales, gentle leaders, flat collars, any harness, these tools are superior to those. Slip leads included, dominant dog collars included, for who can use them. Let's get into it. Safety. It's probably the biggest reason why people don't use them, because they assume that something like this is going to put holes in your dog's neck, which it can if you were a complete degenerate and horrible human and you sharpen them. Some of the really cheap ones that you'll get from Amazon, they honestly just are like cut right off. You can probably see on this, it's quite rounded, right? Like, it's really quite rounded. We'll put the thing on my own neck right now and pull it. It's too big for me. It's not sized for me properly. My neck is smaller than my German Shepherd's apparently. But like, I'll pull on this thing pretty hard, and if that was fitted properly, you shouldn't really have to pull that hard for most cases. So safety wise, if used properly, which means you have this thing on the dog fitted properly, it's the right size. You have a safety, which is what this other loop is for. There's 2 loops here, and very similar to the Starmark collar. For both of them, safety protocols is you put a safety clip on it. The Starmark comes with one, which is in part of the pros and cons. You are only using this tool when you're holding the leash. So safety wise, I've never had a problem with them. Effectiveness. This is where, that's why I was like, immediately drop the Starmark and go right to a prong collar. And I'll show you different styles of prong collars as well. There's only one style of Starmark that I'm aware of, but there's so many different variations of a prong collar, and one, maybe 2 that I'm going to recommend one at the end, and there'll be links in the description. But effectiveness, this is one of the big pros for a prong collar over a Starmark, is like, it's like 90% effective. And for the 10% it's not effective with, is the dog is too sensitive. The dog is like, you get it with some dogs that are like border collies. Oftentimes they are so environmentally sensitive to everything in their bodies, hyper sensitive dogs. Some healers as well, some Aussies, they can be super sensitive to everything. And it could apply to almost every breed but a golden retriever or a lab. Or maybe a Chesapeake Bay retriever. They're just built like brick shit houses, and they don't care about a lot of pressure, regardless of where it's coming from. And so I think even with the Aussies, even with the border collies, or the dogs that are super hyper sensitive, Huskies, it's in the conditioning of them and making sure that your hand is, I always like to say that you can condition a prong collar with dental floss, especially with the sensitive dogs. Is like, you don't want that dental floss will break, so you don't want it to break. And it's just that conditioning of pressure on, pressure off, pressure on, pressure off. And what I mean by that is, like, you put the pressure on, they move, pressure comes off, which is important. Comfort wise, I would say for the for the dog. I don't know, I haven't talked to many dogs about it, but I can observe them and watch them. This is obviously more comfortable, which is also why it's less effective. The point is that it's slightly uncomfortable, or as uncomfortable as it needs to be, to communicate, don't pull on the leash. When you feel pressure, move with that pressure, don't fight it, and it will go away. So you do get with, depending on the metal, depending on the quality of metal, you'll also get some irritation with like really, really short-haired pit bulls. Really, some breeds of dogs have very, very sensitive skin, and it's mostly bulldogs, pit bulls. But I believe that a lot of that has to do with their nutrition and how much biotin they're getting, which is like what makes your fingernails grow and your hair grow and be healthy. So more oils in their diet, more fish oils, more foods with high in biotin can help. But, you know, in the moment, like that'll take weeks, to be honest, like to get their skin healthier and whatnot. And that's where something like this would probably come in. So comfort wise, I would say this wins. Ease of use, I would say they are initially the prong collar you have to be more sensitive with, and so it's a little bit harder to condition. But long term, the Starmark can be harder. It can be harder to use because the dog very quickly goes, oh, that's not bad, I can just pull on this. So ease of use wise, if you don't have a quick release, you have to push this in, which is why for years I've used this cheaper model, which has a little clip and release. And then you, again, regardless of the style, you have to put a safety onto this. Herm Springer model, there's this little clip in the middle, and you can see that the prongs are going opposite directions. So it's creating a more even distribution of pressure, which is why, staying on the topic of ease of use, this little clip that you put in between the middle here slides, and then I can, like a seatbelt, just unbuckle it. So this makes this much easier to use versus the Starmark is like the cheaper version of the prong, where you have this and they're all kind of facing the same way, like the cheaper model of the prong collar. Cost. Prong collars are way more expensive. This cheap version, and here's the thing, if you're gonna buy a cheap one, it needs to have this tightening and loosening effect. The ones that are just a straight band and it pulls, it's very ineffective. Okay, so you need to have the right model. This you're looking at like 20 bucks American, no, 20 bucks Canadian maybe, from leashesandcollars.com. I'll put a link. And then this Herm Springer, you're looking at like $60 Canadian for a 3 mils. Quick release was an extra 20 bucks. And then of course, if you have to buy extra links depending on the size of your dog's neck, this can add up easily to an $80 collar. Cost, you're looking at, they go on sale sometimes on Amazon, anywhere depending on the size model. So like the smaller one, I think I get this on sale for 20 bucks on Amazon, and I get this for sale for somewhere around 35. There will be links in the description as well, and it comes with a safety. So Starmarks are cheaper. Pros of a prong collar, 90% of dogs it's going to work with in like 5 minutes. Like it shouldn't take very long for your dog to learn. 5-10 minutes in a low distraction environment, and then 5-10 minutes in a high distraction environment, and your dog will have a prong collar figured out very quickly. They come in a bunch of sizes. Kimberlin makes a bunch of amazing little micro, arguably Herm Springer collars. They're Kimberlin's not Herm Springer, but they're tiny, tiny, tiny dogs. I've used them on Bichons, on Chihuahuas. They work amazing. All the way up to a 4 mil collar, which you can use on like an English Mastiff. It's a self-correcting tool. So what that means is if your dog runs and hits the end, it feels uncomfortable, versus hitting the end of a harness, it's not correcting for most situations. And then you have to add a correction on top of the harness. 5 minutes or less, so your skill level doesn't need to be super high with a prong collar. Just be sensitive to it and condition it in a low distraction environment. It's an amazing tool for people and dogs that have a huge size difference. So you know, I've got some clients that are like 90-pound women that don't have a ton of upper body strength. That's not me being sexist. That's just a fact, okay? But you can reach out to them, and I'll give you their number, and you can call them or just show up at their house and ask them how they enjoyed working with me, if I was terribly sexist or not. Just kidding, moving on. So if I've got a tiny human and a big ass dog, this is an amazing tool. This levels the playing field, which is why I love it so much. Cons, probably the biggest con is they're banned in some places, because the second con is they look like a medieval torture device. There's nothing pretty about this. I guess a pro is you can hide it with a bandana. Maybe that's a con, that you have to potentially hide it. Another con not listed here, but let's fly off the chart here, is you will get looks. You'll get judgmental looks. Some looks might be like, whoa, that's a badass, cool looking Doberman with a gold prong collar on. Another con is that you can overstimulate the dog. If your dog is being reactive and you have one of these on, it's either going to end it because they're going to hit the end and go, whoa, I didn't like that. But most of the time people go to a prong collar after their dog's already reactive, and so it can overstimulate the dog. Another con, it looks like a medieval torture device. You can't leave it on the dog. You can't just leave it on and forget about it like you can any other tool. Trick question, you shouldn't leave any tools on your dog all the time. It costs more, and it looks like a medieval torture device. Okay, Starmark Pros. It looks nicer. This is probably the biggest pro, is it's such an easier sell, because once it goes on the dog, look what it looks like. It just looks like a black collar. That's it. Like you don't even really see the prongs push in on these. It's adjustable like the prong collar is adjustable by size. They come in different sizes, so you can take them apart and add and remove links. It's more gentle. It's gentler. And so if you have an oversensitive dog, you can use it effectively. It's not going to be as strong because it's plastic, but I've never had a dog like break this in half. It'll be interesting when it's like minus 25 Celsius for you Americans that are like, where does this guy lives in the tundra? It will be interesting to see, like, are there any problems? But I've not seen any reported. So is it weaker? It's not banned, question mark. Please leave it in the comments if you know. Is this considered a prong collar? Because I have looked it up and it's just showing metal prong collars in places that they're banned. If I lived somewhere that it was banned, I would put a bandana over my dog and, I don't know, maybe have a secondary leash and collar. I don't know what I would do, because they're such effective, amazing tools that make it so easy and reliable for some people, for everybody, that if you couldn't have that, I can see there being situations where some people wouldn't be able to keep their dog. Because if a prong collar is banned, an e-collar is probably banned, and then you're really limited with tools. Is that the safety strap is included in the purchase as well. Cons, I would say it's 50% less effective than a prong collar. Plastic is weaker. You can't leave it on your dog. You can't leave any tools on your dog. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Do you use a prong collar? Do you use a Starmark? I think if you're a dog trainer, stay open to these. It's a much easier sell. It might not be the end all be all, but it might help them on their way to better leash walking sooner. Know what you're loved? See you in the comments. Bye, meow.